Alright, quadratic functions or quadratic equations. So we say that a quadratic function has the form of f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And that sounds kind of crazy, but I've color coded these to make it a little clearer. What these a, b, and c things are just coefficients. So for example, if I have a function like this is a quadratic function, 2x squared plus 4x plus 7. 2 would be A, uh, 4 would be the B coefficient, and 7 would be the C. And there's kind of special names for these. So this guy right here is the quadratic coefficient. It's the coefficient that goes with the x squared. Um, so it's the thing that makes it a quadratic equation. You can't have a quadratic equation without something x squared in it. And that's why we say, a cannot be 0 here. Um, you've got to have some kind of coefficient with x squared. It can't be, if you have, let's say you have y equals 2x. That's not a quadratic function. That's a linear function because there's no, you could rewrite this as y equals 0 x squared, which is 0 plus 2x. So you could say you've got an a there and a b there. But the a is 0, so there's this x squared actually is not there. So this would not be a quadratic function. So that's all this part is saying. So that's the quadratic coefficient, and then b is the linear coefficient. So and then c is the constant coefficient, and it's nice, c constant. Yeah, so that should be easy to remember. So I just want to point out. And then a is also in this case called the leading coefficient, because it's the coefficient of the term with the highest power. And a quadratic function will always have the highest power will be 2. You can't have, you might think y equals 4x cubed plus 2x squared. You might say, but Graham, this has, an something x squared in it. Yeah, true, but the highest power is 3, not 2, so that's actually a cubic function. So, I just want to point out some examples here. So in this quadratic function, a is 2, b is 4, and c is 7. So the quadratic coefficient or the leading coefficient is 2. The linear coefficient is 4. And the constant coefficient is 7. This is also a quadratic function, and I put the linear coefficient is 0. And I wanted to show you, you could force every quadratic function to look like this: ax squared plus bx plus c. But actually, in real life, you would write this, maybe more like 3 f of x equals 3x squared plus 2. 0x is just 0, and you don't need to write down 0 anywhere. So if you get something like this, you might think, oh, there's no linear coefficient here. Well, you can imagine that there's kind of like a fake one in there. 3x squared plus 0x plus 2, and so the linear coefficient would be 0. So you can always make it look like this form if you want to. So same thing with here. In this case, the constant coefficient is 0. So in real life, this would look like is f of x equals negative 5x squared minus 3x. You don't need to write plus 0. Um, but but if someone asks you what's the constant coefficient of this function, you could say 0. It's there. It just doesn't look like it's there.